Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Heiligman, and my bachelor's and master's are in social work with direct practice with children and families as my specialty. I've been working with Global Child Advocates for the last 14 years, and we are a team of child protection specialists working with children and families in Thailand, Tanzania, and Myanmar, and doing consulting in the Philippines. I am so excited to talk to you today about family support and monitoring. It has become a huge part of our work because we transitioned or expanded our work from running children's homes starting in 2012 through about 2017 and really expanded into communities to support families. We've seen so much fruit in that process, and we've been able to support so many more children through that model. And so I'm really excited about your journey, and I really hope that this specific training is helpful and really practical for you. I'm going to be covering a lot of information, and so I'm going to try to do that speaking slowly, but also in an efficient manner. So if you need any other details or you want to get information or copies of the slides, I'm happy to provide that as well. Before I move into the content of the training, what I'd like to highlight is this picture that you're looking at right now. This is a picture of one of our staff in the sort of tan shirt. And then she is sitting here with a family of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 children with a single mom. This is in Myanmar. And one of the things that I want to make note of before we get into assessments and monitoring and all of the technical details involved, I want to focus on the fact that she is sitting on the floor with this mom, and she doesn't have a clipboard. She's not, she maybe brought a little bit of supplies, but her main focus there is on relationship and connecting with that mom. And so the foundation of a lot of the things I'm going to talk about today is relationship. And that's really important because it's really difficult to help somebody's mindset shift or to help them get to a place of resiliency if there's not a relationship there that's helping them progress forward. So I just want to highlight that and kind of keep that in your mind as we're going through this training, because it's really important in the work that we do that we are using relationship as a foundation for coming alongside these families in support. The first slide that I want to talk about will help you understand the color coding within the content that I'm going to go through today. I'm looking at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you've likely seen this before. And while he was a humanist, we can recognize that he was describing and able to observe things about humanity and God's creation and put words to it. And so we find many of these things to be true in the families that we serve. Starting with that bottom level, we first need to meet their physiological needs. And this is true because it's really difficult to help them get to understand information or to develop resilience or love and belonging and connection if their physical needs are not being met, if they're not able to eat or provide food for their children. They're much more likely to make desperate decisions based on irrational thinking or just a despair that they're facing will be an obstacle for them to actually make wise decisions about the future of their family and the future of their children. So really, we want to stabilize them first. And it moves up from there to different levels of what they're able to comprehend. If we were to go into a family with training on child development and child brain, how the brain works, neuroscience, or love and esteem, or child protection even, it's really difficult, again, for them to understand or really act on any of those concepts if they're struggling to survive. And so as you'll see in the progress of the framework we're going to look at, I have everything color-coded so that you can kind of see our goal with families is to get them up to those higher levels. The framework we're going to be looking at today, you can see in the bottom, is called the Strengthening Families Protective Factors Framework. And what's interesting about this is that our work was happening for about 6 years, 6, 7 years. We were already working in communities, and there were some really poignant things that we could see working really well with the families we were serving. And we didn't have a lot of definition or words to explain it. But once I found this framework that was developed by the Center for the Study of Social Policy in DC, it really helped us put language and an organized structure to the work that we were doing with families and communities. And so, as you'll see here, the first step that we look at is the concrete support in times of need. And I'm going to be explaining kind of how we determine what sort of supports a family needs step by step as we go through this framework. Like I mentioned before, the concrete support is really to help them stabilize. It's responding to a crisis to prevent family separation and to stabilize that family unit. I want to make one distinction here, that when we talk about family separation, we're not so much talking about divorce or marital reconciliation, even though that is something that we really value and we do try to promote as often as possible. But the main concern that we have is the separation of a child from their parent. And so a child being connected with one of their parents, whether that's a father or a mother, is our primary focus. So when we talk about separation, I just want you to realize that's really what we're focusing in on, is ensuring that children have parental care. And so for each of these levels, in order to determine what kind of supports we might provide for a family, we will have an assessment. Our teams go in, we might get a referral from a community member or from a clinic, or someone has referred or reported a situation within a family where they are really in crisis mode and potentially could make a really desperate decision about the future of their child, like giving a child to an orphanage or allowing a child to go work in Bangkok or a larger city to beg. And so we begin our interventions at that point. We might go visit a family and begin our assessment to determine what kind of supports we will want to provide to help keep them together and to try to mitigate that crisis that they're experiencing. I will highlight that thorough family assessments allow the case managers to really develop appropriate support and monitoring plans for a family. When we work with families, no two families are the same. And we know that is true here in America and all over the world. Every family dynamic is going to be different. But we have seen very similar attributes that affect families or cause them to be more at risk than other families. And obviously, you know most of those, that it's poverty, oppression, any kind of political or economic crisis that's happening in the country is going to put those families at even more risk. And so we have a list of questions that we go through for each of these categories. And we're asking questions to really understand what are the biggest pain points for this specific family. If we just try to provide the same supports to every family, it would often miss the most important pieces that maybe oftentimes families might not need one area of support when another family needed that the most. And so we really want to tailor our support plans to be really specific if we want to see families move up in that level of hierarchy of their needs being met. And so the questions that we ask are really simple, and our team has the understanding of the reason behind the questions. And so if a question doesn't need to be asked, or it's understood that access to clean water, for example, is freely accessed within the community, it can be tailored to each community and context, but we really want to just find those pain points. Additionally, what these assessments help us to determine is it gives us time in their home. And so not only are we doing the formal assessment through surveys, but we're also doing informal assessments through observation. And our team will go into a home and observe the kitchen and observe whether there's food in the home, observe different aspects of how the home is run, how the interaction is between the parents and the child. And while we can't understand everything about a family in that initial assessment, we begin to learn the rhythms and the things that are happening within this family so that we can know how to support and come around them the best way possible. With concrete support, we think of it more as a bridge, so that we're trying to find if a family is desperate, unsafe, and unstable, that concrete support gets them across the bridge to a resilient, safe, and stable situation. And this is one of the most critical aspects of our monitoring and support that we provide at GCA, because it's during that crisis period that families make those desperate decisions about the care of their children and the protection of their children. And especially in the areas where we work in Thailand, trafficking is a big issue. And often families are offered 3 meals a day for their child, a warm bed, a strong education. They're promising all of these things to families, but then those children actually end up either in an orphanage to profit the owner, or in trafficking situations that are extremely unsafe and risky. And so this crisis period is really a focus point for us, which is why I'm spending a little bit more time on it for this monitoring and support piece of this presentation, because it's important that this is where we spend 1 to 3 months of our time supporting a family. Excuse me. Some of the ways that we do this, like I said, crisis nutrition support, temporary financial help. Sometimes we might need to just pay rent for 1 month. Often our families are being exploited by loan sharks. And so we have to come alongside them as they're getting out of really exploitive situations or difficult situations. And sometimes they need some financial help to do that. And so we never want to create dependency upon us, but sometimes something that is a huge hurdle for a family that could be devastating is something that we could more easily provide support for and make a larger and deeper impact with that family. Another thing might be transportation assistance. In the places where we work, legal documentation is really limited and very difficult for families to obtain when they are in the impoverished communities that we serve. And so sometimes it means providing transportation for them to get to work with a songtao or some sort of public transportation, a bus pass per se. They don't have that where we are, but that kind of support allows a family to maybe get into a more stable situation with a job or something that could provide more stable income to get out of that whatever difficulty that they're facing. And so there's many different ways to do this, but those are just some of the examples. The next piece that we look at after we've kind of gotten them out of that crisis period is developing the parental resilience of the caregivers in the home. And so with this, we're trying to see, the goal of that is, sorry, I don't have the slide. The goal of that really is to help parents know how to deal with stress and handle the stressors in their lives and the threats in their life, and to have a positive perspective about their situation. And while this might seem almost insensitive to some of the experiences and situations that our families are in, it is very important for us to recognize that these parents have to believe that they are enough and that they are valuable in their child's life in order for them to be motivated to persevere and endure through whatever difficulty they're facing, and to develop the coping skills, develop the parenting skills that they need in order to care for their child and to continue moving forward when they're facing such hard situations. We really have to come alongside them with that emotional support. Sometimes it is mental health services, so allowing families to, helping parents to be connected with local clinics that might provide free services. Many of our staff are trained in counseling, so it's even just sitting with families and talking to them about what's going on and really understanding what has prevented them from being resilient and how we can develop that better. And again, we have questions that go along with this, but for the sake of time, I'm unable to go through each assessment questions, but we do have a list of questions and do, again, those formal and informal assessments when we're in the home with a family. Sometimes it's also job sourcing, so helping a family secure stable income so that they have a positive income flow. If they're doing something that's more of a risky job, we want to help them get into something that's more dignified or that's respecting their labor rights as well. The next one is social connections. And with this piece, we are really looking at how a family can be connected within their community. We want to see families connected to their communities of faith. We want to see them connected to their local networks. It's strengthening the relationships within their local support systems. And so again, trying to reduce the dependency on GCA as an organization or even on our staff individually. With the social connections, we're trying to help them develop the support system that they need around them that's going to be there long after we're gone. And so if a family is not connected, often we have families that have just come over from Myanmar, specifically with the crisis that's happened over the last couple of years. We have a lot more families that have moved into Thailand, and they maybe don't know anyone in their area, and they're not connected to a church or a community of faith. And so our goal is really to help put people around them that they can lean on and they legitimately could call in a time of need, so that they feel that sense of belonging and they feel connected to the people in their lives, because that just increases their resilience and their ability to stand on their own feet when they're not actually alone in their own community. What that looks like for us, again, is sometimes it's family mentorship. So we have some families that have come through our program and they become advocates within the community after they've worked with us and after we've equipped them and trained them. They begin coming alongside local families that are at that place where they had been so in previous years. And so we've seen family mentorship be a really successful tool for us because those are then advocates that are there when we're not. And they're people that can be eyes and ears, but also provide support throughout the week and throughout the months whenever the family is just needing to rely more on their neighbors and to have good connections that are close by. And so we've seen this really successful in helping develop their sense of belonging and connection to other people that can help them thrive. The fourth area that we look at is the knowledge of parenting and child development. And one of the goal of this really is to increase their understanding of their role and of their value. And so while we're teaching them about the child's development and how a child should grow, they're beginning to understand what parenting might work, what skills they need, and giving them actual tools to provide positive parenting and to do successfully understanding what their child's needs are so that they can respond in a way that is nurturing to their child. And we do this through group trainings. We do this in all of our centers, in our local community-based centers. We provide the training that is in a group dynamic so that they can kind of have that peer support as well, so that everybody in a community is learning together and they're asking questions together so that then they are able to support each other beyond the training. And we really just want parents to understand also just that their role, their value, and how they are designed and exactly the person that God has created for their child. And so more than anything, we really want parents to be able to see that they are enough and that they are uniquely created and that their children need them in order to be protected long term. We talk a lot about brain development and child's needs in this portion of our intervention because we want, when we've seen such success when parents really understand how trauma impacts children and then also what trauma is. Often we take for granted that we all have an understanding of what trauma is and what creates trauma in a child and the disciplinary actions that can cause harm to a child. And in these communities, they don't have any of those resources. They don't have that kind of information feeding into them on a normal basis like we do on our Instagram feed. And so our teams are always working to help parents understand their children's needs and then also just how to be a supportive parent and helping their children thrive in their care. And I think we know everyone here probably understands that one of the misconceptions in a lot of the communities that we serve is that a child is better off in a children's home. Obviously, we know that a parent has to shift their mindset to understand that actually it's not just food and clothing and education that allows a child to thrive, but that their relationship and their connection and that long-term relationship is really what that child needs. And so it's a learning curve for these families where they've thought that their poverty was preventing their child from having the best life, but really we just have to reshape and help them reimagine what it means for a child to be in their community, to be known, and to belong in their own family. And so this is also another part that we spend a lot of time on, and we have a lot of group sessions in every community that we serve, really focusing on this, probably more than any of the other trainings that we do. We do the parenting classes, training on attachment and what that means for a child and its role in protecting the child from trafficking, from orphanhood. We also do training on helping them understand the red flags for grooming, for abuse, for any of the ways that they can report child abuse, the ways that they can report a perpetrator that might be in their community. So there are a lot of child protection training materials that we use for those kind of things in the communities. But we've seen a lot of success in these areas with families. The last area that we the last area that we focus on is the social and emotional competence of children. And the purpose of this really is to reduce the family stress through positive interactions at home. And again, we have questions when we go into a family and do this assessment. As we've been working with the child for a while, with the family for a while, we're constantly assessing the levels of competence that their children have, the understanding, even just the interactions that the children have, their behaviors. And we recognize that when a child doesn't have control over their behaviors, there can be an increase in stress in the home naturally. And so one of the ways we do this is through early intervention with children. We have early childhood development centers that we offer for families so that they have a safe place for their child to be when they're so that the parent can work. If it's not through us, we seek out access to safe childcare, whether that be through a local daycare or another local preschool. And in those centers, we really promote programs that nurture brain development, that aren't just childcare, but really nurturing the child through creative interactions, through stimulation that is age appropriate. And so with that, we're building healthy attachment for the child to understand that they can go to a place during the day and then come home at night and be with their family and be connected to their parents. But our staff are also very committed to teaching attachment to the children and the importance of that for their own health and positive outcomes. And so all of these areas, when we put these together, the goal really is, if you've noticed that the little house in the center is changing colors as we're moving around the circle. And our goal really is to definitely get families out of the red and into more of the green. And sometimes this, when we talk about monitoring, and often people ask about, well, what is the monitoring schedule? And it changes for every family. It's fully dependent on where a family is when we first engage with them and where a family needs to get to and how big are the mountains that they have to climb. And so sometimes we work with a family for as short as 1 month. Maybe they just have a temporary crisis where it's something that we can resolve pretty quickly. And then there's other families that we might work with up to a year. I have on this next slide a targets that we try to focus on. These are sort of our aims really in that first phase. We want to do 1 to 2 home visits per week for about 1 to 3 months. The goal really being 1 month. If we can get a family stable in 1 month, that allows us to kind of move into all of the other stages of support. But we do want to be in their home at least once a week, if not twice a week, depending on the severity of the situation that we've been, why we've been engaged. If it's related to a lack of child safety, if there's anything that's putting a child at risk physically or externally outside of the home, we really want to go in and provide as much support as we can initially, but we do spend up to 3 months getting them past that first phase. And then the next, during parental resilience, we do 1 home visit and then 1 training per week. And the target for this is also 1 to 3 months. And with this, the reason why we don't do training in the first phase during the concrete support is really because we want to get them stable first. And there are times when we interact with a family and maybe they are past the point of they don't actually need any concrete support. They just need that parental resilience. So if they are already at that phase, we can definitely start at the parental resilience with maybe just 1 home visit and starting with providing training. But it really depends, and we don't want to start the trainings until they are out of that dark red color, because we don't want to overwhelm them when they're in a survival mode. It really won't be effective for us to provide any kind of training or information when they are just struggling to survive and they can't think about how they're going to get to the next day and what their children are going to eat. And so that's a really important point of just to note that we really want to get them to that next stage before we start teaching them anything about what they should be doing differently. And then the next, for social connections, we start to pull ourselves back a little bit. So we've gotten them to a stable point, and hopefully by this point they have some income coming in and they have a plan for what they're going to be doing. And so we'll switch to 1 to 2 support calls. If a home visit is necessary, none of this is set in stone, and it's all easy to adapt as needed. But these are just some of our targets, but 1 to 2 support calls. And this is where we really just check in with the family and see how it's going. But really in those calls, we're encouraging them to connect with their local communities. And we're checking in. Have you gone to the community center? Have you been going to the church lately? Have you connected back or followed up with the pastor or the pastor's wife or whoever the person is that you've connected them with at that local network? Just checking in and making sure that they're following up with that, because it's for their best to do so, but sometimes we put off things that are for our best. And so we also will then invite them to group trainings. And so once families are in more of this phase, we want to bring them into the group, because that gives them some peer-to-peer learning where they're able to hear from other peers that are not in totally desperate situations. They're not in the complete red, but they're kind of on the mountain still trying to get up to the top. And so it just helps families to learn how to be vulnerable with each other. It's something that we really value here in the US and Western cultures, but it's not as common in some of the communities where we work. Just families that don't want to expose their weaknesses or to be known by their community, just because there are a lot of external threats locally. And so really checking in with families, but then the group trainings allow them to begin building that support network and relying and leaning on their local community. And so the people that they've connected with, and we set from the very beginning, when we start working with a family, we really set from the onset that we are that our goal is to get them on their feet without us, and that we are not planning to work with them forever. We're happy to be their friend forever, and they're always welcome at our centers, but that our goal is let's make a plan of exit from day one. And that's really for their best. And so again, during that time, we're really pushing them to lean on their own community and their local leaders. During knowledge and of parenting and child development, we really moved to 1 to 2 support calls and group trainings per month. And this is similar to the one before, but we're really helping families to continue those trainings. The training, like I said, we do spend more time in this phase because we really want them to understand about all of the child development and the positive parenting skills, and gaining those skills as much as possible during this time while we have sort of their attention. And we've seen that be really successful, that we see families coming back for those trainings and wanting to learn more. Because it is a low resource area, the kind of training that we provide is very rare, and it's not something that is common in their community or in their local networks. And so they're always eager to learn. Quite often they're asking when we are going to come back and do more training. And so we found that to be really successful in helping parents, even the camaraderie of families coming together and being a part of this kind of program and this kind of learning and growth. They really value that we want to invest in their families and in their individual growth, but also as their family unit as a whole. During this last, during the last phase, the social and emotional competence of children, this is when their children might be in our ECDC program. They might be going to a different preschool or a different kind of program. The family might just be coming to our community centers for training programs for the knowledge of parenting. Often this kind of overlaps with that fourth phase because we're kind of hitting both of those at the same time. But we're available as a resource, and so they're able to call us. We're not always initiating calls during this time because our goal and hope is that they are relying on their community and that they are in more of a green, stable space. But we're available as a resource. And then the primary monitoring is done within GCA programs. So we're checking in with them and making notes, writing case notes in their file when they come to programs. If they are not showing up for programs, or if people mention anything is going wrong with this family, or maybe they're back in a crisis situation, then we will kind of start back at some of the earlier interventions. But as long as things are going well and we're seeing that they're thriving, then we just allow the monitoring to happen within GCA's programs. And again, like I said, all of this can either be in a time period of 1 month to a year. We have some families that really don't ever get that connected to their communities. They kind of struggle to understand parenting and child development. But so not every family can make it all the way through this circle, but our aim and our goal is really to bring families as far along as possible, and at the very least, ensuring that their children are safe and that they are a protective family for for those children. Our goal for all of this, for the red, the goal is that the family is stable. For the lighter red, the family is secure. The orange is that the family is connected. The light green is that the parents are confident. And all of these are with the goal that children are thriving. And this is part of our theory of change as an organization, that children thrive when families are supported and they are within protective systems and communities. And so that's all that I have to share today. I am really hopeful that I know that I covered a lot of information in a short period of time, but I hope that this can be really practical and start your journey as you begin working with families and providing support and monitoring for those families, so that you can help get all of your families to that green level, that children are thriving and that the families are secure, connected, and that they are confidently loving and caring on their children. We've seen this work phenomenally well in the programs that we run, and where we were serving close to 800 children when we first began our transition to family-based care. We've already served over 7,000 children in communities this year. And so I'm really excited about the journey that you have ahead of you. And I'm always available. On this last slide, I have my email. If you have any questions about what we've been through, if you have any questions about any of the information that I covered today, I'm happy to share that. I would love to connect with you, and I'm just so grateful to CAFO for inviting me to do this training. I've benefited so much from all of their resources and just being a part of such an amazing community that is serving vulnerable kids. And so I just want to cheer you on and encourage you in the work that you have before you, and just thank you for loving and caring for the most vulnerable kids in the world, that have lost their parental care. And just, we know that makes them so vulnerable. So thank you so much. I look forward to connecting with you in the future.